Welcome to Better Human Podcast. I'm your host, Colin Stucker. Better Human is about embracing the journey of life, not the destination. It's about self-mastery, thinking for yourself, thinking better, critically thinking, being a sovereign, free, better, awesome, badass human. Get all the updates over at Colin.coach and subscribe in your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. Today, we're talking about money real quick. Hard money. What is hard money? What is easy money? This is a foundation for understanding Bitcoin, which I believe is the future for humanity. So like you're either a pre-coiner or you're a Bitcoiner. You just don't know it yet. Let's talk about the basics of money real quick. Very just intro to these ideas, because these are things that they do take time to percolate and form those neural connections to where you really understand them. And I've been studying money and debt and economics. I've been diving into these things. And I feel like every time I get into it, I'm still just a complete noob, right? But that's good. That's the beginner's mindset. That's what we want. Run through these definitions I have here, and hopefully you'll learn something and or have something that you should explore more on your own. And I got to give a shout out to Robert Breedlove. He's written about this stuff extensively and gone on a lot of podcasts. I recommend checking out some of his work. There's some good Bitcoin related articles. It's definitely worth looking into money, Austrian economics, and Bitcoin, and someone that is writing it from that kind of point of view. Because if you go to just Google and type in like, what is money, or the definition of money or whatever, you get all the Google, big money, big corporate propaganda nonsense, and you're not really getting the truth. That just is what it is. I don't actually trust Google anymore. It's unfortunate. It's become censored. The results are always suspect. It just sucks, but it is what it is. So let's get right into the stock to flow. All right. So stock to flow for a kind of money is very important. And you could also just say asset. Like for example, gold and silver are the most obvious forms of a stock to flow. Stock is the supply. So how much of this thing exists on planet Earth? If we take gold, for example, there's about 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools full of gold around planet Earth. Flow is how much of this thing is brought into the marketplace to be added to that pile, right? So if you have 2 swimming pools full of gold, and every year the gold miners mine more gold, how much more gold is added to those swimming pools? Gold has one of the you could say strongest stock to flows, or the lowest stock flows, meaning that the supply increases every year only at about 2 to 3%. Silver, I believe it's about 7 to 8 to 1. So the stock to flow is, for whatever we have now, you get about 7 to 8 times what gold is. So let's say maybe 7 to 10% is the flow percent every year. So that every year the total supply of silver has about 7 to 10% added. It grows about 7 to 10% a year. If you're going to hold your value in an asset, whether it's silver or gold, you need to understand stock to flow, because if you have this thing and every year more is being added to the total supply of this thing, then the market is going to reflect the price and it's going to come down. So the value of your holdings are going to get eroded away a little bit. You're going to lose value every single year. Gold has been agreed upon for thousands of years as the best form of money because it is so hard to get out of the ground, and it's so hard to manipulate or counterfeit, etc. So all of these things go into the soundness or the hardness of money. A hard money is something that is very, very hard to manipulate, to counterfeit, to make more of it. And that's why gold has won out. Silver, because, at least at this point, there's more of it in the Earth's crust. We've had more access to it. It's had a lower price point compared to gold. The second part to hardness is human tampering. How easy or hard is it for a government or an individual or a group to tamper with the supply or the stock of this thing? So what's actually happened is the gold paradigm was gobbled up by central banks, and then now central banks around the world control most of the gold, and they're able to, as a result, tamper with that. They can either say there's more of it than there is or less of it. They can control where they move it to, if they don't, if they hide it, whatever. And what that does is that removes price signals. What that does is that hides price signals from the market, and the market doesn't know how to price it. And that's why a lot of these banks, like JP Morgan, for example, was fined something like $1 billion for tampering with the price of silver. And I think they've done it with gold as well. So the price manipulation adds considerable risk, because if you decide to store your life savings in silver or gold, and then there's some shenanigans going on and a bunch of it floods the market, your life savings could potentially be decimated. Or in the reverse. So overall, there's major problems. What you want in money is you want it so that nobody can mess with it. You want the hardest money there is. You can't counterfeit it. You can't make more of it, or it's very, very little can be made at a time. And you ideally don't want a government or group or an individual to be able to print more of it, and change the dynamics of the supply and demand, which is what the value is based on. And as you'll see, this is why Bitcoin is money perfected. It's the perfect money. It's one of the greatest discoveries of mankind. It's actually going to change the world. People don't even realize it. So let's get into these points here and keep this short because I could go on and on about each of these. So hardness, defined as resistance to unpredictable supply increases and debasement of value. Fungibility, and these are the properties of what makes money money. So fungibility, units are interchangeable and indistinguishable. Units are interchangeable and indistinguishable. Units are interchangeable and indistinguishable from one another. Meaning, if I have $1, I get $1 in exchange, right? One Bitcoin is the same as one Bitcoin. Gold, based on weight, although there can be issues with this because you have to verify and you can counterfeit and you can put like fake alloys in the middle of it. So it is actually kind of hard to verify this. That does put the fungibility at risk. But also, if you have like a huge bar and someone else has like a 1 ounce coin, it's kind of hard to transact in day-to-day transactions, which is why gold isn't used for that. And this is why coinage actually came about, and maybe we'll get into that later. Portability, ease of transporting or transmitting monetary units across distances. So what you want with money is you want to be able to move it easily. Again, this is something where gold does not work well, because if you want to send gold like across the pond to England or vice versa, which a lot of countries do, you're looking at like hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe, security and all these different things. It's not easily portable, which is, again, why we moved to a paper-based currency. And, when you understand the history of currency, you see how it made a lot of sense to go from carrying around lumps of gold and silver and just having a banknote that represented that in a vault, etc. Durability, resistance of monetary units to rot, corrosion, or deterioration of value. So throughout history, there have been a lot of forms of money: seashells, tobacco, tea. And the problem with all these is, tea can go bad, or tobacco can go bad, or rats get in and eat it, etc. These are real concerns with storing your monetary energy in something that can go bad. Obviously, that's a problem. Divisibility, ease of subdividing or grouping monetary units. And this is what I mentioned with, basically under the fungibility part. It's not really the same thing. Because if you have the same amount of gold and you can exchange it for the same amount of gold that someone else has, like, it is the same thing as long as you can verify it. But divisibility is the thing that makes it hard to do, right? Because you want to be able to easily take 1/10, 1/100th, or even 1,000th of a piece of gold or whatever, right? Just like dollars have cents and nickels and quarters. You want to be able to easily divide this money because you're not always going to have the exact amount of money for the thing that you want, right? You have to be able to give change and to receive change. Security. And this gets back to the hardness. Resistance to counterfeiting or forgery. It's hard to do that with something like gold and silver, but it's still possible. And if you actually think about the incentive for doing so, is a huge incentive, because if you have a huge bar of gold that is, $40,000 to $50,000 for a bar of gold, and they can carve out the middle and put some cheap alloy in the middle, and it's the same weight, and on the outside it looks like gold, but the inside is been hollowed out and filled with cheap stuff, well, they're going to give you, maybe half the amount or a quarter of the amount of gold, and you're going to be paying for the full amount. So that's obviously a problem. Sovereignty, the source of its value, trust factors, and permissions necessary to transact with it. Natural social consensus or artificial government decree. So sovereignty is one of those things where the better you are able to be sovereign with your money, the better it is. And this is why Bitcoin is just the immaculate creation that it is, because no government can block it or prevent it or anything. It's amazing. You can actually just memorize 12 seed words in your head, and that can be your forever key to access your Bitcoin. It is incredible. And so there's two other ways that you want to think about money and how to use them. And so this is salability across scales, a good that is easily subdivided into smaller units or grouped together in larger units, which allows the user to trade it in whatever quantity desired. So that's the divisibility. Then you have salability across space, a good that is easily transported or transmitted over distances. Again, silver and gold doesn't work. Even dollars and cash isn't good for this. This is why we eventually adopted, a digital monetary thing, because you could actually send bits of data across the internet and then you keep a ledger. And that's how a lot of the fiat banking system is actually executed today. It's just ones and zeros on a screen. Salability across time. This is very important. This is the storage of value property that all good money should have. A good that can reliably hold its value into the future by being resistant to rot, corrosion, counterfeit, unpredictable increases in supply, and other debastements of value. So that's what you want, is you want money that can be saleable across scale, space, and time. And we talked about the properties here of how to think about money and how each one of these kind of fits into that. So this stuff is, when you dig into it, it's really fascinating. Austrian economics, the history of money, look into debt, look into how coinage happened, the fall of Rome, look into history, and then understand all the use cases and all the examples of currencies failing, and like why Rome was debasing its currency and how that led to and how that potentially led to the collapse of Rome and things like that. It's really fascinating stuff. So this is just an intro to money and what is hard money versus not hard money. In fact, before I let you go, let's just compare the US dollar. So the US dollar has a lot of these things. The problem is, and it's a really big problem, it's like the biggest problem, is the government just keeps making more of it. So there is no supply and demand. And every time the government makes more of it, the dollars that you hold and the dollars that you make, they're worth less, right? Very simple supply and demand economics. Yet 99% of the public just doesn't get this. Nobody told them, they don't think about it, whatever, but everybody feels the pain. When you go to the grocery store, go to the restaurants, or anything you do, the prices, as I record this in 2021, we're hitting pretty hard inflation, and it's probably going to keep going. You're definitely feeling it then. The solution, of course, is buy Bitcoin. Also, solution is to understand what is happening. The more you understand the stuff, the more you can make better decisions to prepare yourself against it. That's going to be it for today. Get on the Better Human newsletter over at Colin.coach, and I'll see you in the next one.